The Resident Evil 4 remake is set to launch March 24th. I'm on the Open Critic page. I got Metacritic on the other tab. The reviews are phenomenal, of course, as expected. I mean, the original Resident Evil 4 is widely considered the greatest Resident Evil game, probably the best, or one of the best games of all time. Depends on who you are, of course. I mean, it depends. But anyway, Open Critic here, the top critic average 92, critics recommend 97%. You see 10 out of 10. Now, PC Gamer only gave it an 80 out of 100. There's some technical issues with some of the versions of the games and stuff, but by and large, you're going to see a lot of 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, etc. They got all under 5 critic reviews, yada yada. It goes on. I'll link this in the description box if you want to read it for yourself. But I mean, glowing reviews. Same on Metacritic. 93 is the Metascore on the PS5. On the Xbox Series X, it's a 91. PC's a 92. It's it's considered great, fantastic, etc. We'll pause that. Game looks phenomenal. Looks fantastic. I mean, everything from like the graphics and the gore and stuff, and some of the additions and everything. Leon can crouch. You can do some stealth. You can parry the chainsaw with your knife. You can parry attacks with your knife, and so, etc. You know a lot about the game. It looks awesome graphically. It's gonna play awesomely because it's you can actually move and shoot at the same time, which is a welcome addition. I've loved the original Resident Evil 4. I actually just beat it again probably a couple months ago. I've beaten it out how many times. I've lost track. I've played on the GameCube, the PS1, or PS2. I mean, just go on and on. Hell, I beat it on the Xbox 360, etc. I'm just a sucker for the game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So I'm super excited for this game. But there is not without some criticism of the game, of course, for stupid reasons. Especially the original, they didn't like the way Ashley was and stuff. Not just because she was annoying, because she had her own health bar and she could die and so on and so forth. She still can in this one, although she just gets incapacitated. Falls to the ground. You got to pick her up. If you don't, then she gets attacked and gets killed. It's game over. That kind of stuff. But saw this article. It's up on Archive, of course, from Kotaku. The Resident Evil 4 remake changing Ashley's skirt gives me hope. At this point, it's like you don't get mad about this kind of stuff. You just kind of shake your head because you're like Kotaku. You're going down the tubes. Just like BuzzFeed, they just laid off a bunch of their people from the news staff and everything. I did a video about that and everything, etc. Whatever. I'm not even. I'll link this in the description box if you want to read it for yourself. But it's just basically about them changing Ashley's skirt. You write an entire article about it. It gives me hope. Oh yes. Then here's an article from the Gamer. Resident Evil 5 is too racist for a remake. I remember the hubbub when it first came out. Kotaku was one of the people leading the charge because they're stupid. Because they didn't, that's why they actually ended up adding in a whole bunch of other like zombies of various ethnicities to the game. Because to have it all be black people would just be racist. Now, one of the points they do bring up in here is about, well, spoiler, I guess, if you want to call it this. But the part where you're doing on the boat and you meet the villagers who are wearing the basically the loincloths and that stuff like that, and they got the spears and the shields and stuff. There's a part in the game where you're doing that stuff. That's what they're bitching about for the most part. It's just stupid. Of course, they got to put in their usual. The game depicted Africa and the awkward marketing, eager to focus on a white man waltzing into an impoverished town only to murder its inhabitants. It goes on and on. Of course, one of my favorite parts. Kind of like ironically, or however you want to look at it, is when Chris is punching the boulder at the end. That's just freaking hilarious. It's so stupid. But anyway, whatever. Yeah, that's the part where they're, immediately, part about the swamplands are immediately assaulted by natives donning bamboo skirts, whose main mode of combat is throwing homemade spears while screaming in a dialect that feels ripped straight out of insensitive 30s cartoons. It's difficult to defend and especially awkward to revisit all these years later. The Ganados, they were in a Spanish village, but that's okay. It's okay. Let's not make fun of that. It's just fucking stupid. And of course these kind of articles are coming out because okay, well, first off, with the whole Resident Evil 5, you would imagine that that would be the next game that they would want to remake. Although it's hard to say because they might not. Because number one, they haven't remade Resident Evil 1 like this. They kind of they did for like the GameCube where they made the graphics better and so on and such, but it kept the same controls and shit. It's like if they were to remake the original Resident Evil, that would be awesome. That's exactly what I would want them to do. The only other game I would want as much would be if they like redid like a Code Veronica, something like that. Other than that, it's like they already did 2 and 3. Could you redo obviously 4? Could you redo 5, 6? Sure. Those games aren't as in much of a need for it because like those games. I know some people give a lot of shit to 6, and I think a lot of the problem has the more to do with the story. It just starts getting more and more over the top and ridiculous. But they could. I'm sure they eventually will, just because it's like these remakes are selling very well. And I expect Resident Evil 4 to just do crazy numbers in terms of the amount of sales. At least I would imagine. I mean, because number one, like I said, look at these scores in the 90s. Now you could say low 90s, it deserves better, you know, but some people are just hesitant to give 10 out of 10 or even like a 9.8, 9.9, that kind of stuff if they go that detailed into it. They're a little hesitant to do that because of the whole, well, 10 is a perfect game and there's no such thing as a perfect game, you know. But all I know is I'm super excited for it. I would imagine most people are. They're gonna, I think if they were to remake Resident Evil 5 or 6, or ideally, like I said, Resident Evil 1, Code Veronica, I would imagine people would be, super excited for those games as well. I mean, I guess we'll see. But I think Capcom will eventually. It's just a matter of time. But you're always gonna have idiots complaining. I hope that this doesn't prevent them from wanting to do that. Like, the gamer.com, some shit stained site like that, complaining about Resident Evil 5 shouldn't prevent them from remaking the game. But I'm sure that they will to a point, or they'll cut out the Swamplands part or whatever. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.